Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. You take the red pill, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, 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 take the red. You stay in Wonderland. You stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Goes, 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 goes,
Now, from sunny South Florida, it's the Red Pill Reality Show with your host, Riscalla. Every Saturday night from 9 p.m. to midnight on the L&M Network. And now, your host, Riscalla.
Hello and welcome everyone. It is the Red Pill Reality Show. I am your host, Riscalla, coming to you every Saturday night, 9 p.m. to midnight here on the L&M Network. www.latenightinthe-midlands.com. You can find a chat room, a free chat room there. You can also listen to the show live as well. If you're a Facebook fan, you can go to Facebook, find the Red Pill Reality Show there, click on Contact Us, and you will link over to our live server. Oh, many things to talk about. But I think the most prominent thing that we can talk about tonight is what is happening with our government. Really, I don't know how to say it. I've been saying it for a while. I'm worried that we're going to have an all-out civil war. There is a civil war occurring now. It's happening right now. It's more of a political civil war. It is a civil war. It is a war nonetheless. I have never, ever, in my wildest dreams, would have imagined that an attempted takeover of the country being done before our eyes, literally done before our eyes, and it continues to happen. Unbelievable. Truly unbelievable. The criminals are out there, kind of remind me of the guys that they're down on their luck. They can't find a job for whatever reason, so they get a cardboard sign and they put why lie, need money for beer, and they sit there and some of them actually collect money. Well, these guys are about as blatant as that. Unbelievable that we can have secret hearings where people who belong in the hearings are not allowed in the hearings. Unbelievable that people who are holding the hearings can basically guide the witnesses to answer questions in the manner that they want. If they don't like the questions, don't answer it. I found out about a week ago, maybe a little longer, the president had called up a bunch of Marine reservists. Some of them went to the border. Some of them are in Washington, D.C. But what I found out today from a couple of different sources, an ex-Secret Service man, they believe that some of them are called up back on active duty to protect the president. This is how bad it has become. I believe that the information that they have is accurate, that this president's life is under the greatest threat now than ever before. Now, mind you, I know, I think it's about a dozen times there have been attempts on his life. Now it's in the open. We have representatives openly speaking about, yeah, we're going to arrest him. We're just trying to figure out how. Really? This is a legally elected president. And don't let them fool you. He did win the popular vote as well as the electoral vote. Once they removed a little over 1 million fraudulent votes for Hillary, and then another 900,000 later on, yeah, he won the popular vote as well. This is absolute insanity. This is extremely dangerous for our country. As adversaries around the planet watch one side of the government doing everything they can to benefit our country, while another side literally does everything they can to undo what the other side's doing. This is absolutely unacceptable. Now, if you've been listening to the show, the last 7 shows, I think it is now, I can't even keep track of it anymore, we've been talking about something that occurred back in the late 1800s. And it was based around the 14th Amendment. And this thing called a reestablishment of a state. Our nation was basically overthrown back in the late 1800s. I'm having a problem saying that. I think the number is 1861, but I know it's the late 1800s. Some of the actual governors were kicked out of office because they wouldn't go along with what was happening. And new governors were put in by force. What would you call that? I wouldn't call that America. Why am I talking about that now? Because we find ourselves today in a situation where the government that has been manipulated in such a way and run in such a way was never intended to be what it is today. Never. They have far exceeded the authority that they have, and the authority that they have is all by deception. Now, mind you, I'm not saying they don't have the power, because they certainly have the means to make you do whatever they want. They've proven that time and again. But they don't have the authority. We're going to be talking about this again tonight. One of the goals I would like to see for Florida, because that's where I'm at, is to get a reestablishment of this state. And then get people to commit to being citizens of that state. And beginning to undo what is a tightly woven rope of deception. And the more that I learn about life, the more that I learn that I don't know what the truth is sometimes. Some of the most basic things we've been lied about. Oh my gosh, where do I start? I was talking to somebody the other day and they said, oh yeah, well, you know, fossil fuels and this and that and the other. I said, they're not fossil fuels. These are things that the earth makes. Gold, it makes gold. The planet is a living organism. These are some of the byproducts of our planet. I think it's called ambiotic. I'm not sure if that's the correct word, but it's something that is made within the planet. Otherwise, we'd have run out of oil a long time ago. My God. I was told growing up, now some of you are going to laugh, but they had people believing this, that the oil came from massive amounts of dinosaurs that died rapidly, creating pools of oil. Fossil fuels were introduced to give it a scarcity, a limit, so that they could rise above everything and raise the price on you. You remember peak oil 2000? How many people remember that? It's going to be the end of oil in 2000. Prices are going to skyrocket in 2000. Just like all the computers were going to fail in 2000. More fear, more confusion. I'm personally sick of it all. And what I'm watching today, I don't really care whether you like this president or you dislike this president. You should be extremely concerned what is going on. My God, if they can do this to the president, what's to stop them from doing it to you or me? And how many of us could withstand anything like this man has withstood? This should be extremely concerning to each one of you. These criminals are openly, brazenly attacking a president who is legally, lawfully, the majority of the popular vote as well as the electoral vote. He won it all. Now, whether they like that or not, I would say that's their problem, but unfortunately, they're making it our problem. It's bad enough that we are dealing with a government that has been manipulated in such a way that it really is not even a reflection of what it's supposed to be anymore. And people tell me I'm exaggerating. I don't think it's exaggeration. If they're willing to do this to the president because he represents a threat to them. Understand something. It's already proven. It's already documented. He's done nothing illegal. Nothing certainly to be impeached for. But they carry on straight out that they want this man out of office. It's because if they can't get rid of him, they're all going to prison or jail, or they're going to get executed. It's already starting. I found it rather interesting that the Attorney General, William Barr, reinstated the federal death penalty about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. With this last recall now of the Marines for the president, to protect the president. The first public statement regarding them was to help in case there is a public civil unrest, I guess is the word that they use. They're preparing for something big. And I believe what they're preparing for is a threat, a direct and violent threat against this president. These are the same people that murdered JFK. These are the same people that murdered RFK. These are the same people that murdered Martin Luther King. My personal opinion, they're behind John Lennon's murder and a variety of others. Anybody who represents a threat to their system will be taken out in whatever way possible. If they can destroy them in the courts of public opinion and wipe out their credibility, then that would be sufficient. If they're not able to do that, they can wipe their finances out. If they're not able to stop them from doing what they want, wiping out their finances, wiping out their credibility, the next thing is they wipe out their life. These are the same round of people that are brazenly speaking now of taking away your God-given right to defend yourself. Openly speaking to you and telling you, we are going to confiscate guns. Now, mind you, they're willing to do this to the president. What the hell do you think they would do to you and me if we couldn't defend ourselves? I know you've heard it many times, as I have heard it many times. This next election is going to be a breaking point. I don't think at any other time in my life those words have been more accurate. This election is going to either make America or break America. That's what we're up against. This is what we're looking at. A government that is literally imploding from within. A government that has been manipulated through deception into an evolvement of something that doesn't really even reflect what it was supposed to be anymore. A government that has no authority to force its citizenry to do anything, yet it gets away with it. How is that possible? We have something that happened to us as a nation many years ago through a deception, through a lie, and in that, a nation was literally overthrown. People were taken out of office by force. There was no option. We don't want you anymore. You're not going along with the program. Get out or die. Is that the America that you and I believe in? That's not the America that I served. That's certainly not the America that friends of mine who went off to wars and never came back believed in. I get asked sometimes why I do what I do. I've had the privilege of listening to people who are in war. I've had the honor of them openly sharing with me in exquisite detail what it was like for them. It's kind of a therapy in a way. I had many of my friends that came back from Vietnam who saw some horrendous things and shared them with me. Shared them with me to the point where I could see literally pictures of what was going on within my mind. And it was heartbreaking. And I cried with them, and I hugged them, and I tried to comfort them as much as I could. But that memory is there in their mind, etched in forever. And the best they can do is hide, push it back, because when it comes to the front, it's quite devastating. A friend of mine and I were working midnights. And at midnight, we had what was called midnight chow. You could go have a meal at midnight. You could have breakfast or you could have dinner. It was up to you. As we were walking to the chow hall on base, a car that had passed maybe a football field 100 yards away, maybe, not really close to us, backfired. In the blink of an eye, my friend disappeared. I kept calling his name. I would hear no answer. After about 5 minutes, I heard a rumbling in a bush, and there he was, in a fetal position, eyes as big as golf balls, reliving something that had happened to him when he was in Vietnam. And after a few minutes of speaking to him, he came out of it, and we headed our to the chow hall. Of course, he didn't want to eat anything after that. He didn't really want to do much of anything other than take some drugs and pass out and hide. The things that have been described to me are nightmarish. Why I do what I do is I would do anything possible to avoid a war. Why I scream out about these illegal wars that we have, because I know what's going on is not to the benefit of this country, it's to the benefit of corporations. Lives being ruined for money and power. That will never sit right with me, and I will never sit quiet about it. I will never be a part of that. And for someone who would sit by knowing what is going on and say nothing, that makes me a part of it. I will not be a part of it. And my next dilemma is that I have learned that back in the late 1800s, as I have been sharing with you for 7 shows now, this country was overthrown. I've always said that something's not right. Something is not right. We certainly do not have a government that is by the people and for the people. You'd have to be sleeping under a rock to believe that. I watch these criminals, literally criminals, no different than a criminal that would put a gun to your head and pull the trigger. No different. The only difference, there were fancy suits, expensive ties, and they have something far more powerful than a pistol. They have a pen. A pistol eventually runs out of ammo. A pen put down on the right piece of paper can ruin millions of lives. I watch these people run freely, laughing at us as though they are untouchable. Seemingly it is so. How many of us know that there are people now in politics who certainly deserve a minimum of a prison sentence? My opinion, a lot more than that. Yet they walk around happily with hundreds of millions of dollars in their accounts. Now, I will not try to speak for anyone else. I'll speak for myself when I tell you my patience is gone. I see what is happening in this country, and it's truly shameful. It is spitting in the faces of those who have devoted their lives believing that they were serving this country. And there are far too many of them that have shed blood or hurt themselves in some way, shape, or form in order for us to, quote, have freedom and watch this insanity occur before our eyes. As people openly and brazenly tell you that they are coming to take your rights from you. This election is going to be the greatest event in the history of our country up until this point. By far. If we make it to then, I hope that the people will choose and make the right decision. Because what we're under is far more than a physical threat. The root of all of this is spiritual. The further that we have gotten away from our God-given spiritual gifts, the more the society has declined and the further we have gone into chaos and fear. And the dark side, well, their modus operandi is order through chaos. That's what you're seeing. order through chaos.
I know you're out there. I can feel you now. I know that you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin.
There are facts we're not being told on TV, so I want to talk to you about gun control in America. Why did all of the big media focus their attention on the attacks in Orlando and completely ignore the fact that the following weekend 52 people were shot in Chicago, a city with some of the strictest gun control laws in the country? There seems to be an agenda for gun control while ignoring the gun violence in other cities and countries where the experiment of gun control is already underway and failing. I carry a gun because there are only two types of creatures on this planet, predators and prey. No one watches a cheetah chase down a gazelle and deny that the gazelle has the right to use its horns to protect itself. But there are people who would deny that same right of self-defense to other human beings. Such people seem to think that the way to stop the cheetah is to cut the horns off the gazelle. That somehow, if you make it easier for the predator will simply go away. It doesn't work that way. If you make it easier for the predator, you get more predators. I carry a gun because when predators know they're less likely to have an advantage, they're less likely to be a predator. The FBI found that when states allow concealed carry, murder rates are immediately reduced. And cities in America that pass a law requiring households to have a firearm see the number of home invasions drop dramatically. I carry a gun because the ratio a gun is used in a homicide is significantly less than when it's used in self-defense. Firearms are used up to 300 times more often to save innocent lives than to commit a murder, and guns prevent up to 2.5 million crimes in the U.S. every year, often without a single shot ever being fired. I carry a gun not because it's a weapon, but because it's a shield. 200,000 women every year use a gun to defend themselves against sexual abuse. I carry a gun because almost every mass shooting in the last 50 years took place in a gun-free zone. Law-abiding citizens are forced to give up their right to protect themselves, while every criminal breaks the law, including gun-free signs, when they decide to murder. I carry a gun because a gun-free zone makes it easier for predators to target their prey. Stricter gun laws make the problem worse, and making guns illegal wouldn't remove murder from our cities any more than making heroin illegal stop addicts from doing drugs. I carry a gun because the facts are nations with strict gun control laws have significantly higher murder rates than those that don't. I carry a gun because I know in the U.S. scissors and knives kill almost 5 times more people every year than rifles do, including the AR-15 and other so-called assault rifles. Calling a ban a tool will not resolve the problem. I carry a gun because criminals break the law with or without them. The 9/11 terrorists used box cutters in airplanes. Timothy McVeigh used bags of assault fertilizer. I understand that some people want to blame things like semi-automatic rifles, 30-round magazines, hate crimes, terror threats, gun control, historic flags, national security, religion, or illegal immigration. I understand we want to blame something, anything that we can control. But don't blame me because I carry a concealed gun to protect my family. I understand we need to start addressing what we really want to ban: violence, murder, and insanity. I carry a gun because I know who's pushing to ban them. Our right to bear arms is not there simply to protect us against lowly criminals. I know the politicians know this, which is why they call for gun control instead of crime control. I carry a gun because I've seen gamblers who want more winnings, alcoholics who want more alcohol, and people with power want more power. I understand what the Founding Fathers knew, that the right to bear arms is there to protect the American people from those drunk with power, and I understand every country was free before it wasn't. I carry a gun because having the right to bear arms gives the citizens of this great nation a fighting chance against the predators of greed and power, whether in our home, our capital, or our neighboring lands. Evil exists only because too many good people stand by and do nothing. I know seeing America's right to free speech was a chilling wake-up call when it became locked away in a zone. That's why so many steadfast Americans and great organizations stand up for the people to keep the balance of power from tipping over. I carry a gun because it removes the unfair advantage between predators and prey. I don't carry because I'm looking for a fight. I carry a gun because I'm looking to be left alone. People can only persuade you to do something by one of two ways: reason or force. Having a gun with me removes their option to make me do something by force. It helps keep predators civilized. That's why the right to bear arms is important. That's why I own a firearm, and that's why I'm proud to say I carry a gun.
You're listening to the Red Pill Reality Show on the LNM Network. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Do you need toner for your Epson, Hewlett-Packard, Canon, Brother, Apple, or Sharp printers? Look no further than Laser Technologies. In business for over 20 years, they offer the lowest prices on toner on the web. They can also repair your laser printers and toners fast and easy. Call their expert staff today at 561-792-9600 or email us at service@laser-technologies.com for all your toner needs. All toner is shipped nationwide. Why wait? Get the lowest prices on toner. Call or email us today.
Grace has some pretty stellar arms, like Serena Williams good, but her face is pretty disgusting.
Someone please tell him to go back into his closet and leave us alone.
Britney's face is so stupid and I hate her so much. It's like a scientist created her in a lab to annoy humanity and didn't even do that good of a job.
Megan reminds me of a troll doll that came to life intent on killing us with her stupidity.
Why is Grace's head so big? It definitely has nothing to do with how smart she is and probably everything to do with how bloated she is.
He's so funny. Just kidding. Who would find this disfigured flamingo funny?
Never post a selfie of yourself. You look so ugly.
The only reason you have so many views is because we think you're a freak and we can't look away.
Megan is the main reason that the world sucks so much.
I would rather get cancer than listen to another Trevor Moran song.
You are a mistake. You should have never been born.
Drown yourself in a shallow puddle, please.
Wow, I hope she's sterile.
These really stopped being funny a long time ago.
You're so much more than the things that people say about you.
Those people have no right to say cruel things to you to make themselves feel better.
It's okay that you sound different than everyone else.
That's what makes you so special.
We will not tolerate it.
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 Every day, people make me feel like I stand out simply because of the way that I look.
Every day people make me feel small.
Every day I face the cruel words of bullying.
And every day people tell me that I'm brave for enduring this humiliation.
But we're not the brave ones.
It's the ones that say no to the bullying.
The witnesses.
If we all join together, there's nothing that we can't do.
We will no longer be the silent majority.
When we see bullying online,
We will let the world know that we're going to take action with the eye.
Now, when you see online bullying, there's something you can do about it.
Our actions will overpower cruel words.
I am a witness.
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 There is power in words.
But it's nothing compared to the power of the actions that we put behind our words.
Visit eyewitnessbullying.org to learn more.
I am a witness, and so are you.
I'm gonna stand by you.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
We have ignition. Strap in. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. You take the red pill, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, 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 take the red. You stay in Wonderland. You stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
You're listening to the Red Pill Reality Show with your host, Riscalla, every Saturday night on the LNM Network from 9 p.m. to midnight. And now your host, Riscalla.
Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill.
All right, we are back. It is the Red Pill Reality Show. I am your host, Riscalla. A big shout out to the L&M Network. Thank you so much to the network that allows us the platform to reach so many people. Without you couldn't get it done. And of course, without the listeners, because we are a subscriber-supported station. Thank you to each one of you who subscribe to the station. When I ask you to subscribe, please understand, I don't ask anything of you that I don't do myself. And what that means is that I am a subscriber. I have subscribed from the very beginning because I believe in what we're doing. I believe the information that comes forward may not be from every show that is on the network. Of course, you know, oh my gosh, I don't even know how many shows we're up to now. I couldn't even tell you. I know it's well over a dozen live shows on the network, well over a dozen, that come to you on this network. Some of them are entertainment. Some of them are vital information, like what we're going to be discussing tonight. If you want to know the truth about our history, about our country, this is some of the information that I would say to you is vital for you to have. Again, some of it's entertainment, some of it is vital. Every bit of it is worth the $5. That's what it costs you, a whopping $5 for a whole month to get to listen in. And there's a whole bunch of perks that come with it. The most important thing is you will be supporting a station that we don't answer to the big corporations. So we don't allow them to push us on their agendas. We had one sponsor that walked away from us because they didn't like what Michael was saying about China. Well, Michael is somebody who is going to speak the truth. If you are somebody who is in the right, somebody who stands for what is right, then you shouldn't be afraid of the truth. The only people in my book that would be afraid of the truth are people that have something to hide, something that they've done that they would rather not come out into the open. Otherwise, what fear would there be? So, as I mentioned earlier, or before I forget, I want to say thank you to the guys who donate, too. My goodness, how could I be so callous? I apologize. Those of you who have donated, thank you so very much. Whether that's a financial donation or donation of your time. I know we have some volunteers that do a variety of things. Thank you. Again, all of us together, working together, is how this moves forward and how we become a success. So a big thank you to the subscribers, a big thank you to the donators, a big thank you to the L&M Network, a big thank you to the couple of radio stations that actually pick up our signal and pass it out for us. Thank you to you guys. Really appreciate it. Anyway, tonight, I think we've done 7 shows on this now. This is how vital I believe that this is. You heard me earlier give you my opinion about what's going on with our government today. Today. I drank some water and now it's deciding to act up on me. We are truly in peril today, and that's not an exaggeration. If people truly knew what was going on, I think that it'd be pretty hard-pressed just to sit back and do nothing. And my greatest fear, as I mentioned earlier, is an all-out violent war. Right now, there is a war going on. Make no mistake about it. There's absolutely 100%, as sure as the sun is bright, there is a war going on right now. Right now, it's a political war, but it's out in front of us, in front of our eyes, for all the world to see. How one part of the government is attacking another part of the government. It was never intended to be this way. And the evidence stands before you. And many of you, like I had a couple of emails come in and say, well, Scott, okay, it's fine and dandy. What are we going to do about it? It's a good question. People have taken affirmative action to do something about it. One of those people is Milo Townsend. I have him on with me tonight. Another person is David Callihan, an educator, a person who takes time out of their life, hopefully as an investment, to teach other people what has happened. And in working together, like a puzzle, we begin to fit pieces together, we find resolutions. Milo found a resolution. There are states that are going through processes now to restore. Restore is what we're after. I asked a question on one of the shows. Are we here to overthrow the government? And I wanted to make it clear. It was a purposeful question in the sense that I wanted to be clear. I'm not asking people to overthrow the government. This is not what we're about. What we are about is a restoration. You have all my life I've used a wide variety of tools. And one of my favorite tools was an adjustable wrench. And I had this one that I really enjoyed. But as the years went on, the plating came off and it began to corrode very easily. And the problem would be that when I'd go to use the wrench, I couldn't adjust it very well because now it's corroded, it's got all this rust on it, and it doesn't move freely. So one day in desperation, I decided I was going to acid soak this wrench and then take it. This is how much I love the wrench. I'd take it to a friend of mine who did plating and have it replated. I restored the wrench the way that it should be, so it would operate in the sense that it was intended to be used. That's what we're asking, a restoration, and there is a process that can be done. So I'm going to bring Milo Townsend on first. Milo, thank you for taking time to call in. Welcome back, my friend.
Well, thank you, Riscalla. Thanks for having me back again.
It's a pleasure, my friend. What we're talking about, I really believe, is a vital part of our future. Either we're going to sit back and allow the continued insanity to go on and literally be forced to live under this, because there's going to come a time when we know they don't have the authority. We know they have the power. And I believe that if we allow them free reign, which is what they've had for so many years, as it continues, like the clip that I play about carrying a gun, people who have power want more power. They'll be drunk with power. They'll want more and more and more power. And that's not acceptable to me. And I know on behalf of those whom I knew who went to war and did not come back, I know that it would not be acceptable to them either. That's not what we served for. We deserve better. I mean, I've said that time and again. We, the American people, deserve better. We certainly deserve far better than someone who is running for president of the United States stating that they're going to take your guns from you, stating that they are going to raise your taxes. Now, taxes, that's a whole show within itself. They have no authority to take our taxes, to take money from us that we've earned. It's not within their authority, but yet they're able to get away with it. This is what I'm talking about. This government is not for us. This government is for something completely different, alien, if you will. And the time for us to get back and restore what was, what's the best word, manipulated by deception, to restore that back to the way that it was supposed to be. Go ahead, Milo.
Oh, I was just going to say the word you were looking for is stolen.
Yeah. Yeah, stolen. Let me bring David on as well. David Callihan, thank you for taking time to call in. David is a former educator, and when David speaks, you'll know. You can tell he's a teacher. He comes forth with that spirit of teaching. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it, man.
Hey, it's good to be here with you again, Riscalla. It's always entertaining. You know, you said that the shows we're doing are not about entertainment. I think this is entertainment. It's, you know, inspiring people's lives and getting them to think in ways
I guess in a way it is,
really do make a difference, you know? So glad to be here.
So while I'm thinking about it, Dave, how many years have you invested of your life in researching this subject?
On this specific thing that we've been talking about a little over 11 years. I've been devoted in many of those years full time, day after day after day, just going and digging in and trying to find answers and looking for information, and was able to be privileged enough to be able to spend some really devoted time in finding some of these things out. Yeah.
And I know Milo. How many years have you spent, Milo?
Doing what exactly?
Around the subject, researching the subject, the subject of reestablishment and the fact that we were overthrown back in the late 1800s. How long has it been since you've known about all this stuff?
Since about 2012, about halfway through 2012.
Okay, so we're roughly seven years or so. You've got invested into it. So the reason why I'm asking both of you is so to let the listeners know this is not something that been at it for a couple of months, been at it for barely a year. This is something that they have invested a lot of their time, years of their lives in. And in my opinion, somebody doesn't do that unless they truly believe there is something of vital nature to this. And I believe in the same way. I think this is absolutely vital to our future in this country, to be able to restore what was taken from us. And in that restoration, restore sanity, for God's sake, because what's happening today is absolutely insane. And my greatest concern is if they're willing to do this to the President of the United States, who, by the way, anybody who knows anything knows he hasn't done anything illegal. He hasn't done anything certainly to be impeached for. But yet they're able to bring this hell upon him. What could they do to us? How much could we withstand? I would venture to say 1/1000th if we're lucky. That's why there's an old saying, you strike when the iron's hot. Right now, I believe the iron is hot. Right now, it is the time to speak about this subject more than ever before. We have a government that is literally imploding. And what are we going to do if these people decide to go to war? It is going to be hell on earth for us. So I would do anything that I could possibly do to avoid that. And that is my intention in doing what we're doing, talking and bringing the subject out into the light and discussing it. That's my intention here, to bring forth a change that is going to avoid a war, a physical war. We're already in a war, a physical war. Anyway,
Riscalla, let me point out something I think could be helpful for people to wrap their minds around the significance of what we're looking to accomplish in the future. You may remember back in the early 1980s that we had a certain mindset of education in America. You either put your kids in a public school or you put your kids in a private school. And then some crazy parents got this idea, you know what, I think I'd like to just teach my kids at home. Seems today like it's, commonplace. But back then, that was a very radical idea. In fact, it was such a radical idea that if you did it, parents could go to jail for homeschooling their children because there were no laws in any state that allowed for parents to take their children out of schools and teach them themselves. And I happen to have been involved in that early stages of what was called the homeschooling movement. And at the time, my first son was born in 1981, and he was only 3 or so years old when we became involved in the homeschooling movement back then. Even before our kids were even in the compulsory attendance age of 7 in Texas, we were involved with a group of guys and ladies. They became known as the KD7. Sorry, the KD5. I said the wrong number. These were 5 parents in Katy, Texas, who decided that they were going to homeschool their kids. And they took them out of the public schools. There happened to be a guy by the name of Rprs at the time, who was the chairman of the Texas Board of Education, and he went after those 5 parents. And he threatened that their fathers were going to go to jail. It would have been the KD6, except I wasn't old enough that it would have affected me. But I knew these guys really well. We all went to the same church. And fortunately, there were enough parents in the state of Texas that they began to go to the legislators and convince them that they needed to fix the laws so that parents could homeschool their kids in the state of Texas. My point is that when you get in your gut a certain understanding of rights, an understanding of powers and privileges and duties and immunities that we have as American citizens, as citizens of our states, that we really, in our core, believe that we ought to be able to live our lives a certain way, then we have the opportunity in this country to fix something. We have the privilege to correct. And that's what we're talking about tonight, is there's things we've figured out and the things that we are learning that are going to allow us to correct a problem if we have enough wherewithal and enough courage to go down this road. And that's really all that this is about. And the question is there enough of us, and are we willing to do those things that are required, that are necessary for us to readjust things to make the corrections that are needed? And I think that analogy, we have a historical precedent that does give us the ability to understand how this works in a modern context. So I thought it was important to kind of throw that into the picture.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Now, Milo is somebody who has literally lived the change. And one of the things I wanted to ask Milo tonight was, how did you go about making this change, Milo? I know there was, I think you said it was under 20 people, around 20, roughly 20 people that were involved in all this. How did all of it start? Can you tell me about that?
Well, actually, I wasn't there when it all started in North Carolina. North Carolina was reestablished in 1997, so I only got involved I became a state citizen in 2013, in January of that year. So, no, I really can't speak from personal experience about how it began in North Carolina, but I can tell you that we have shepherded Texas, who reestablished earlier this year, in March of this year. We've shepherded them through that process, and I was integrally involved in that, and I've seen it, been a part of it, so I can tell you how some of that occurred for them. Obviously, I wasn't in Texas, so I was seeing that from a little bit different perspective. I can go into that, or I can tell you what I have heard by way of, secondhand knowledge about North Carolina. You take your pick.
Yeah, I'd like you to talk a little bit about Texas, since you have firsthand knowledge and you were involved in that. Let's discuss that a little bit.
Okay, sure. Well, what happened with them, and I can't say all of them, but a good many of the folks in Texas actually had come from a movement called the State Nationals. They were already in touch with each other. They already had a group. They've grown that group over time since then, but they had a group to begin with, so there was a handful of people that knew one another, and they already had kind of a working knowledge of the 14th Amendment and Reconstruction and the effects of those legal issues. So they didn't come to it completely, a blank slate. They had a great deal of knowledge coming into it. But I had reached out to some people with the State Nationals movement back in like 2014 or 15 and just tried to start a dialogue. That was something that went on with a number of people in a number of different states. But eventually, after a lot of conversation with a number of different people that were in that movement, a few years ago, some of them from Texas reached back out to us again and expressed an interest in trying to pursue reestablishment. I don't know exactly what their thought process was in detail, but essentially they had come to a conclusion that they believed that our legal process of reestablishment was the way to go, that it was worthwhile and valid and ideal in their opinion. And so, obviously we were very happy to hear back from them. And so we carried on with them, the first step really is to find your constitution. What constitution are you going to reestablish under? You've got to know what form of government. And so the form of government is defined by the constitutional charter. And of course, the pre-Reconstruction Constitution in Texas, actually, there was more than one. In North Carolina, it was very simple because there was just one. It was from 1776. And it had been amended over the years. I think the last amendment was in the 1850s, I believe, but or maybe it was the 1830s. I'm not honestly sure what year, but it had only been amended a couple of times. But in Texas, they had three different constitutions to choose from. Actually, they had the one from when Texas actually became an independent republic, declared its independence from Mexico. That was 1835 or 38, somewhere therein, 36. I'm not quite sure. But then they had one from 1845 when Texas actually joined the American Union and became a state in the Union. The state of Texas that same year, for that purpose, drafted a new constitution. And then they had another one from 1860 or 61 when Texas declared its secession from the Union. So they had a few different ones to choose from, and part of the process is going back to look and see, look at the details. What is the language in each respective constitution, and which one do you want to use based on the historical, based on the historical succession of them, the circumstances that surrounded the creation of each one, that plays into which one's most appropriate, and then also based on the language of them. And so our objective as America's remedy has always been that we are not secessionists. So we generally tend to reject secession constitutions. Just kind of from, right out of the gate, that's kind of a non-starter, because most of those, they changed the wording to specifically relate to a state that was outside the Union. And our whole purpose is to reestablish the state as a part of the federal constitutional union.
Mm-hmm.
So we rejected the 1861 Constitution. We looked at the Constitution from when Texas was a republic on its own, an independent country all by itself, and ultimately rejected that one because, again, we're trying to reestablish a state that's in the Union. So we arrived at the conclusion that the 1845 was most likely going to be the one that they should use, and then in looking at the details of it, it became clear that that was the most appropriate constitution. The next step in the process, bear in mind, of course, preliminary to this, you have a group of people who have a working knowledge of the general legal argument. And so once you have that, then the rest of this, you can work with it. It's almost like the legal documents and the process is all just clay. But if you don't know how to turn clay on a potter's wheel, if you don't understand the process of creating a piece of pottery, then
you end up with a piece of mess. Right?
Yeah, you're just going to make a mess.
That's right.
You're not going to have great success turning that pot.
Yeah.
So, back to it. Basically, once we got through determining which constitution to use, then the next step is to draft a declaration of reestablishment based on all of the documentation and historical record that you've been able to dig up, generally from the state archives and from the internet. The internet's a wealth of information.
Oh, it's amazing.
But you dig up all of the historical documents that pertain to the reconstruction of your state, or the way in which your state was affected by Reconstruction in the 14th Amendment. And then you compile all of that, you put together the narrative of how it took place, and extract from that basically the most salient points, the most important, turning points. And like, for instance, in North Carolina, to jump over for just a second, in North Carolina, as you saw in the video Nation Overthrown, which you've watched patiently and graciously.
I'm going on
now,
the third time.
Right?
Yeah.
Third? Yeah. So, as you've seen in there, North Carolina, we have a document that was actually a surrender letter from the duly elected acting governor of our state at the time in 1868. And that governor wrote this surrender letter in the event of his turning over the office under protest and duress, mind you, turning over the office to a military-appointed governor. W.W. Holden was the incoming governor, and that was a critical piece of information for us to find, because it really lays out in such stark terms what was taking place at that point in time, what the nature. It gives you great insight into the nature of that Reconstruction Constitutional Convention.
You used the word Reconstruction. When I saw that document and I read what I read, that wasn't a reconstruction. That was an overthrowing, literally an overthrowing of the government.
It is. You're right. You're absolutely right. But, the acts that precipitated all of that being the Reconstruction Acts, that's how I meant that. The term, to define that particular point in time, the consequences of those legislative acts of Congress. But, so that was one example from us. But Texas found documentation of their own, not anything quite that dramatic to my knowledge, but they had a military order from the district commander, the general overseeing the district that Texas was a part of, because the Reconstruction Acts also divided those 10 states up into, I think it was 7 military districts. And so they found documentation. They got their constitution that they wanted to work with, to reestablish under. And then we guided them through the process of writing a Declaration of Reestablishment. And it's interesting, I just want to mention that, with regard to Texas, they wrote that document, their own Declaration of Reestablishment. They pretty much wrote that document on their own and then sent it to us. And we had suggestions and, little critiques here and there, but largely the document that you would see today, if you went and got a copy of their declaration and read it, is, it was a creation of the people of Texas. It was not something that North Carolinians wrote for Texans. And I really feel like that's the way it ought to be. The people of each of the states really ought to take command of their own destiny, take control of the direction that they want to go.
That's the way it was intended to be, right? Am I mistaken? But right?
No, you're right. You're right. So, there's guidelines, there are legal principles that we urge people to follow, but by and large, I really am excited to see the interest develop in these other states, because it is exactly as it was supposed to be. I might have said it the other day, or maybe I just said it to somebody else on a different phone call. But one of the things that David talks about is vested authority, empowerment. I think I did mention it last week on the call near the end, is how it really just, it makes me so excited. It makes me so happy to think that there are people that are interested and willing to do the things that are required. It's an empowering thing to take a hold of your destiny and reestablish a state and become responsible for your path in life. And so that, to me, is one of the most edifying and validating parts of this entire process, is to see other people that are willing to not just go along and get along anymore. People who don't just want to, kowtow to whatever the authorities, whatever the proverbial authorities say you can or cannot do.
We've reached a point in this country. This is, I imagine me when I was growing up. I grew up in Coral Gables, which is a small town inside of Miami. We had saltwater canals, and I spent a lot of my time fishing. I think it really kept me out of a lot of trouble, because I really enjoyed fishing. My whole family did. But the point being is that I could go to the canal at any given time, go fishing, and nobody would bother me. Now, if you could do it today and somebody sees you and reports you, you're going to be required to have a license. You have to be careful with what species that you're catching, because if you catch the wrong one and it's being banned at the present time, you could be fined for that. You could end up actually going to jail if they think that you're doing something nefarious with the fish. So my point being is that today we are asking the government for permission for all kinds of things. And the bottom, in my opinion, and I may be wrong, we'll take a call here in a little while. Paul Thompson wants to call in. I'll call out the numbers to call in here in just a minute, and Paul wants to call in and make a comment, so I'll let him do that as well. But my point being is that as I have gotten older, I have to look to my government to get permission to do more and more things that you shouldn't really have to have. Why would I have to have permission if I was out hunting for food? Hunting for sport is one thing. I don't agree with that. But hunting for food, why would I have to have permission to do that? Fishing for food, why would I have to have permission to do something like that? I want to travel from point A to point B. Why should I be concerned with being pulled over at some point between A and B and asked for my driver's license, my insurance card, all the other stuff that I'm supposed to have? And if I don't have that, there may be a chance that I would be put in a cage. Or if I don't get put into a cage, they will fine me money. They have...
Yeah, confiscate your vehicle.
Yeah, they have far and above exceeded the authority. Now, they have the power. That I will not argue. But the authority, they have far and exceeded their authority. And this is what, when I first heard about this, this is what the light bulb that went off in my mind. Because I kept saying, for long before I heard about any of this, something is wrong with our government. Yes, there are criminals with our government, but even the way that it's working, something is not right. It goes further than that. And we need to be able to correct this. Now, I've been saying that for 4 years. I'm going on 5 years. And then I just recently learned about what had happened in the late 1800s. And I said, this is the answer to what I've been asking for. This is the proper way to restore our government back to a government by the people, for the people. Now, David mentions, I want to get David in this part of it. David mentions about the militia, that the militia would actually be the police force. And in my opinion, this is what I'm going to ask David now, in my opinion, the militia would be everyday people, your neighbors, for example, would be part of the militia. Am I correct, Dave?
Yeah, it's interesting you asked that, because one of the things I have in front of me, Riscalla, is the Florida Constitution from 1845, which was the first constitution of the state of Florida. And in here, in Article 7, I believe it is, it actually says this: all militia officers will be elected by the persons subject to military duty within the bounds of their several companies, battalions, regiments, brigades, and divisions. And they were literally elected by the people that they served. And so what you have in a militia is a representative government, okay, where the people that were going to be the rank and file were actually officered by the people they elected to be their officers. It was truly a representative government of law enforcement, of what we would call the police power. It's totally different from the way that we operate today.
So let me interrupt you for a second, because I want to just kind of bring this drastic difference out. What do we have today? What we have today is, and I'm not down on the cops, because just like any other industry, they're good and bad. But the facts are the facts. What we have today, if you look back from 2001, September the 11th to be exact, from September the 11th, 2001 until present, police have killed more citizenry than soldiers have died in the war. That is not the way that it's supposed to be, my friends. You can easily go find video after video after video where police literally kill somebody with impunity. And many times the person is unarmed. One person I'm thinking of was doing nothing but sitting in their car within their neighborhood doing something, but minding their own business within their car, and they were shot dead. Because when they woke up, they were startled by these cops. I guess they were snoozing in their car, and the cops walked up, startled the guy, and when the guy made a quick move, they just started shooting. And I'm not talking one bullet. It's not like it used to be in the old days. I think it was an unwritten rule that the cops would not shoot at somebody unless they were shot at. There's no such thing anymore. These officers have been trained under militaristic strategies, And many of them don't really even know the Constitution. So in comparison with that to your neighbor or me or someone that you personally know being somebody who's responsible for the policing activity, that's what I'm trying to compare.
Well, Riscalla, let's look at it even more specifically. Let's take the county sheriff as an example. Who's elected within the county sheriff department?
Nobody that I'm aware of.
Well,
other than the sheriff, yeah.
Well, yeah, the sheriff. All of the rest of the officers, from the majors to the captains to the lieutenants, the sergeants, all the officerships are appointed by one man, versus a system where every single officer, and by the way, all the way up to the generals, okay, were elected in the original militia companies of the original and the divisions and the brigades. That's why it went through that list of all those different levels of military structure. Every single commander over every single one of those particular components was elected by the people. A totally different mindset than what we have today. We literally are an oligarchy in America. We are not a constitutional republic.
I agree, and there's so many people constantly crying democracy, and it just drives me up the walls because we're not a democracy.
What you could say is we're a democratic republic, meaning that the republic is appointed by the people through elections, popular election. It is a democracy in that sense, that it is a democratic republic. The representatives are democratically appointed.
Yeah, I've always said that it's a constitutional republic that utilizes a democratic process for electoral system. But the bottom line is, it is a constitutional republic. But you'll hear repeatedly over democracy. You need to know there's a difference between the two, and it is drastic. The difference is big. And and as big as that difference is probably the difference is even bigger when we're talking about the way this country was originally intended to work together as the states being almost like individual countries, sovereign unto themselves, and then us as a union creating sovereignty. None of that occurs anymore. We don't have that anymore. All of that was taken away. And the reason I bring up the thing about the police is, here's what is sad to me. In just in the last decade and a half, since 2001, I have watched, let me put it to you this way. Growing up, sometimes I got in trouble as a kid. You know, kids do things and they make a decision, and it's a stupid decision, but they don't really think the decision out, and they end up in trouble. So I got in trouble a couple of times as a kid. And we had neighborhood police. We had 6 police officers that were responsible for our neighborhood. They utilized 2 cars, and they worked 8 hours apiece. 24 hours a day, we had cops around our neighborhood. And we knew the cops. We knew them by first name. They knew us. They knew my mom and dad. So anytime that I had a problem, anytime that I would create a problem or got into trouble, all they had to do is look at me and say, I'm going to talk to your parents. It would be the most devastating thing in the world. Today, you don't have that kind of thing going on. What you have I saw a video of a police officer at a school with a young 11-year-old girl. I don't know what this young girl did, but she was walking out the door, and this police officer walks up behind her and tells her, okay, I've had enough. You're not going to do this. You're not going to do that, and begins to forcefully attempt to arrest an 11-year-old girl. Threw her to the ground. Now, if that were my daughter, I would be in prison. I would probably take that man's life. 11 years old. He is on top of this girl like she's a desperate criminal. And I think what she had done wrong, and she's talked back to the principal and walked out the door in the process of doing that. And my point being is that these officers that we have today that we call police officers, they have been militarily trained by a variety of sources. One is Israel. They go to Israel and they get trained over there. When they come back, their whole belief system is skewed. Some of them truly believe that the people are their enemy because this is what has been pounded into their brains. As a result of that, we have almost a police state in some places. In some places, it is absolutely a police state. You can be killed, literally killed, if you don't go along with whatever it is that they tell you. Have you got ID? No, I don't have any ID. Okay, you're under arrest. Why? What did I do wrong? No, you're resisting arrest. Bang, 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 you're dead. Of course, that's the Reader's Digest version, but that's what happens time and again. I could bring horrific examples up. I think of the black man, that man in New York who was supposedly selling individual cigarettes. They took his life. They literally choked him right there on the street and took his life. That's not the way it was supposed to be. I'm presenting to you, if the militia was supposed to be our police, and the militia would literally be our neighbors, they wouldn't treat you in such a way. This is what I'm alluding to. And I believe that it would be that way, and this is what has been robbed from us. It's one of the many things that we're missing because of this deception. But this is something that is every day. When I was growing up, it was no problem to go to a police officer and ask them for assistance or help or something. Today, I think a lot of kids are concerned with how safe, especially if you're a child of color. How safe is it for me to go to this police officer and ask him something? Because you're liable to have your life taken from you. So again, this is how far off base we have steered. And the reason why I'm continuously talking about this now, 8 shows about what we're talking about. I believe this is a vital component to a positive change in our country. Like David pointed out, a great point. At one time, you could be put in jail, for God's sake, if you took your kids out of school. They considered that child neglect. And then through the actions and through the unity of just a few people, they were able to move forward with that and be able to educate their children without the threat. Of course, in my opinion, the government doesn't have that right. Again, they don't have the authority, but they have the power. So somewhere along the line, we've lost that balance. And this is a way for us to restore that balance, to reestablish our states. Milo was instrumental in Texas and is somewhat familiar with North Carolina. So we're not talking about a theory here. We're not one of those people who theorizes, okay, well, if you do this and you do that, and yeah, if we do, but we've never done it. This is why I say to you guys, when I ask for you to subscribe, I don't ask anything of you that I haven't done myself. I bring these people on because they've done it. Milo has done it. That's why I want Milo on. This is why I want someone like David on. A decade of his life dedicated to learning this process and then willing to share it with others. This is one of the greatest gifts that we can give as human beings to each other, is knowledge, to pass the knowledge on, something that hasn't happened on a regular basis in a very long time. Growing up, it was very commonplace. Now, it doesn't occur anymore. Everybody's an island to themselves. And this is part of the problem that we're fighting today. We must become unified. Here is something to be unified under. Stuff was stolen from you. Wouldn't you want it back? That's what we're talking about. All right, let me go back to Milo for a minute. I had wanted to ask Milo, the process itself, Milo, can you tell me, did it take a month? Did it take 2 months? Did it take a week?
With regard to North Carolina, I don't know how long exactly it took from the point at which they had a group who all committed to the idea and then ultimately wound up producing a declaration of reestablishment and sending notice to then the acting governor, who was Jim Hunt, in the de facto North Carolina, and the president of the U.S., who was at the time Bill Clinton. I don't know how long that process took for North Carolina. Of course, they were inventing it as they went along. I mean, they were discovering the legal principles that guided them through the steps as they were doing it. But with regard to Texas, I believe the process ultimately, from the time the people in Texas pretty much decided that was what they wanted to do until the time that they produced their declaration of reestablishment, it was somewhere on the order of about a year.
All right, so it's not, I'm thinking it may be years in the works before we can say. So if I were to say within a year or a year at the most, we could actually bring forth the action of reestablishment and have that completed?
It all depends on the motivation of the people that are involved in your state.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately,
But
yeah,
it's
I mean,
possible.
you could probably do it a lot quicker. You
Yeah.
could probably do it in a matter of weeks if everyone that was involved had an adequate understanding of what they were doing and they were sufficiently motivated to go do the research, pull it all together, and produce those documents and sign their names. I would imagine, the very, very minimum that you would have to have is maybe a month or two.
Wow. Okay.
But that is an ideal situation, which probably will be hard to come by or impossible to come by in the real world. In the real world, people are always having to learn, and their learning is sort of a constant process. A good friend and mentor of mine from when I was younger used to say that, your schooling will come to an end, but your education will never stop.
Amen.
So, these are the things that you continue to learn even when you're in the middle of the process. And as that goes on, and then people have life to deal with, they've got responsibilities and bills to pay, and all of that gets in the way. So things kind of come in fits and starts, And so I would say give it a year.
Mm-hmm.
Would probably be a reasonable amount of time to allot for that.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to be taking calls when we come back. I'm going to take a break, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. When we come back, we'll be taking calls, comments. I know Paul is one of them that wants to call in. He has a comment that he wants to make. Paul was, if my memory serves me correct, I think he's the acting lieutenant governor or governor for Texas.
That is correct, Lieutenant Governor.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. So when we come back, we'll have him on.
Give you a lot more perspective from Texas's side of things.
Yeah. So we're talking about something that is not just theory, something that people have actually done, something that has been proven. That it's not just something we're lip service, I guess is the best way to put it. This is actual action that has been taken and the results of that action. And it is a step towards a government that was intended to be by the people, for the people. Because if you believe that's what we have today, you are sadly mistaken. And you are deceived, as I was deceived for many, many, many years. It is not what we have today, not even close. And the evidence is before us. Anyway, let me take a break, and we'll be back in a moment. This is the Red Pill Reality Show. Don't go away.
I know you're out there. I can feel you now. I know that you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
Better than Late Night in the Midlands.
There's nothing better than Late Night in the Midlands. I love to talk to people from the heartland. They're tremendous people, they really are.
Opinions, politics.
I'm going to give you 10 minutes tonight because you're tremendous people.
Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris, she's a horror show.
Elizabeth Warren. Pocahontas.
But I mean, Elizabeth Warren, I love my Pocahontas. She is the gift that keeps on giving.
Oh, and good old Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders, oh my God, what a communist. He's not even a socialist. He is such a communist.
Then there's Sloppy Joe. Sleepy Joe.
Sleepy Joe Biden. Every time he sniffs a little girl's head.
You heard the man. Nothing better. Late Night in the Midlands. We cover everything.
and as we have been programmed mentally, intellectually, one must be aware of this being programmed like a computer.
Programming that we are constantly assaulted by throughout our life conditions us, it programs us to a particular worldview.
The project is literally the secularization of the world. New secular or worldly order.
A new study says the news media have been pushing a gospel of godlessness on the American public.
Because this media is here and designed to make sure that they ask no critical questions. To make sure that the only thing that they are concerned about is having a good time. And so that is why today, one of the struggles that you have as young people, that when you want to do different events and you want to talk about real issues, you have the struggle of many of your peers who've been so conditioned in this matrix that they would rather party than listen to the truth. They would rather party and shop and go to the mall than to stand up for issues of justice. They're stuck in the matrix. But you have the responsibility of helping to wake them up.
Now, how do we know that there's a God? After having been thoroughly brainwashed. And how do we know that there's a creator?
I can read your mind. We ain't about to get along, and I know why. You think we owe you when we don't. Yeah, there's a welfare line wrapping round Main Street. That money ought to help our boys coming back from overseas. We're gonna paint this country red like Reagan. Gonna shoot our guns, gonna eat our bacon. There's a great big bald eagle who's smiling on us, and soldiers who died for your privilege to fuss. If you wanna leave, you can't take it no more, and I'll show you the damn door. I'll show you the damn door. And all these protests, you're throwing out some heavy words, and I'm just wondering, how the hell'd you get off work? 'Cause I got 65 long hours that I just put in last week. Now I gotta go back home, hear you whining on TV. We're about to paint this country red like Reagan. Gonna shoot our guns, gonna eat our bacon. There's a great big bald eagle who's smiling on us, and soldiers who died for your privilege to fuss. If you wanna leave, you can't take it no more, and I'll show you the damn door. We're about to paint this country red like Reagan. Gonna shoot our guns and eat that bacon. There's a great big bald eagle who's smiling on us, and soldiers who died for your privilege to fuss. If you wanna leave, 'cause you can't take it no more, and I'll show you the damn door. I'll show you the damn door. Get out.
You're listening to the Red Pill Reality Show on the LNM Network. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. You take the red pill, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, 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 take the red. You stay in Wonderland. You stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Goes, 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 goes,
Now, from sunny South Florida, it's the Red Pill Reality Show with your host, Riscalla. Every Saturday night from 9 p.m. to midnight on the L&M Network. And now, your host, Riscalla.
All right, welcome back. It is the Red Pill Reality Show. I am your host, Riscalla. You can find me here every Saturday night, 9 p.m. to midnight, www.latenightinthemidlands.com. You can find me there. Facebook, go to the Red Pill Reality Show, click on Contact Us. You can find me there. If you have unlimited calling, you can actually call in to the show. Let's see, we have call-in numbers 701. Well, if I can find it here. I had it just in front of me here. 719-9704. That's strictly for listening to the show. If you have limited data or something like that and you have unlimited calling, or maybe you have a landline, you can call in and listen there. Now, we're going to take questions and comments. You can call in to the board, and that number is 561-440-5174. 561-440-5174. Use that number to call in, and we'll take your questions and your comments. And let me get back to my two guests that are with me tonight. Gentlemen who have taken time out of their lives to share with us information, in my opinion, absolutely vital to the future of this country. If you are somebody who has been literally sleeping under a rock, then all of this would be a shock to you. Otherwise, if you're somebody who has any degree of maybe a couple of neurons firing up there in what we call a brain, you realize what we have to say is absolutely logical, legal, and we deserve to be treated better than we have been treated in this country. All of the power that these people get, they brazenly spit back in our face, comes from us. And there must be a time when we say enough is enough. I believe that time is past, and I believe that what we're presenting to you tonight is a way to get our country back. A way to have a government that is by the people, for the people. So I have with me tonight, I have Milo Townsend. I have David Callihan. Both of these gentlemen have years they have invested in their lives in this subject of the reestablishment and taking back what is rightfully ours, restoring something that has been corrupted. The reestablishment of the states. Milo, let me ask you a question, and I'll get to David in a second. In your experience, did they need attorneys in any of this stuff?
Well, in our experience, actually, and I don't mean this as a disparagement against attorneys in general, because I've known many in my life, and a few of them have been genuinely good people. But in our experience, attorneys generally don't want to touch this argument with a 10-foot pole. So, no, to my knowledge, as far as I'm aware, everyone who has been involved in this so far has pretty much either done their own research or, formed a community that kind of collectively did their research together. I will say this, though, in North Carolina, in our state, and by that I mean the NCAR, we have one gentleman who has been a great benefit to us over the years, especially during the early period of reestablishing here. And he's still a state citizen, and he's still active. His father was an attorney, and so this gentleman picked up a lot by being around his father's practice. And of course, he picked up a lot through his own research too, as well. But I'm just saying that that's the closest that I'm aware of that we have come to using an attorney. He's kind of a paralegal, and also John's wife, Jill, she has studied to be a paralegal. But there's a big leap, between being a paralegal and actually being, a practicing attorney.
So the reason I asked is I figured that was what the answer was, and the reason why I was asking is just to kind of point out, it doesn't take, a special group. It's just plain ordinary people that did this, that achieved this process. They weren't high-ranking within the existing de facto system, attorneys or judges or something of that nature. They're just simple people, that everyday people, and that's what we need. We need everyday people.
You're exactly right. What's interesting to me on that subject is that in what I've learned through this whole process, a lot of people look at law, people who don't have a whole lot of interaction with it, and they think, oh, well, that's an esoteric subject. That's something that you've got to know a special language to be able to understand what these people write in legalese is what they call it. And they disparage it, and they kind of shun it because of that. They feel like it's a very specialized and kind of a hidden discipline. But it's really not. It's not. If you know English, and if you have even the capacity to learn a modicum of Latin and, use a legal dictionary, then it's really not that far-fetched. It's not that difficult to reach an understanding. The law, in its origins, was intended to be something that everyone could understand and everyone could follow. I mean, it was expected that you knew it because you had to know it in order to follow it, not just the legislated acts, not just the promulgations of the king and parliament, per se. Originally, the Anglo-American system, that was where it originated. But not just to know what you were being told to do or not do, but to understand the concepts of common law. And David can speak greatly to this because when the colonists came here to America, they came here with that working functional knowledge already in themselves. They already knew the structure and the principles, the axioms of law, and they brought that whole system here with them. And granted, they modified it during the colonial period so that by the time, the states declared their independence, they were already to the point of changing some of the ways that they operated, some of the more, detailed nuances of how law was practiced and how judgments were arrived at. But in general, the system didn't really change that much. It's still basically the same system. And it's really easy. I mean, it really is easy to understand. It's accessible.
In my experience, as limited as it is in comparison to some of the experiences you guys have in this, I would imagine that they wanted to set it up in a way, which in a way you kind of alluded to this, Milo, they would set it up in such a way where you really didn't need a, quote, lawyer, per se. You just needed to understand the law, and the law was written in such a way that it was easy to understand. We don't have that today. And the greatest example is look at the tax law. Look at the income tax law. I don't know how many thousands of pages there are for the income tax law. The Declaration of Independence was 1 page. To set an entire country free was 1 page. To steal money from you under the auspices of taxes, they got to write thousands and thousands of pages. Why? To make it confusing and deceptive. And I think that goes directly against what these founding fathers and the people who were involved in setting this country up. I think it goes directly against what they wanted. They wanted it, I think, this is my opinion, I don't have any evidence, but I think they wanted it to use the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. Where anybody could defend themselves. They didn't have to spend tens of thousands of dollars to keep themselves from being put in a cage. Because the law was easy to understand, and it was easy to speak the law. We don't have that. We don't have anything like that. Anyway, it looks like I have Paul on with me here, so let me see if this is Paul. Paul, is that you at area code 903?
Yes, it is, Riscalla.
Well, good evening, my friend. Thank you for taking time to call in.
No problem. My gosh, you guys have talked about so many different subjects and topics. I don't even know where to start.
Well, you had mentioned there was something that Milo said that wasn't quite accurate.
Well, as far as Texas is concerned, when we reestablished our state, we intended to make everything transparent and have it, everything, conference calls, videos, everything we did to be posted online or, archived somewhere so that the general public can, see what we're doing. We're not secretive. We're not, trying to.
Is he dropping out on you guys?
Yes, he is.
Okay.
He is.
Hey,
okay.
Paul, you're loud and then you're dropping out. I didn't know if it was me or not, but you're loud and you're dropping out. So I don't know what you're doing, but if you're moving around, try not to move around.
All right. My apologies. But we are trying to be as transparent as we can be about, what we're doing. So everything we do is video recorded, conference call recorded for the general public to see what we're doing.
Yeah, you keep dropping out, Paul. I don't know what's going on. It's almost like your microphone's falling out or something.
Well, I'm not moving.
Yeah, your volume jumps from real loud to real weak.
All right, let me try this. Is that better?
Right now it is, yeah.
Okay. All right, as I said.
We heard the part about the transparent.
Yeah, everything we do is always recorded for the general public to hear about what we're doing. And we don't, we're not trying to be secretive. We're trying to be open and as public as possible. And as far as when Milo was talking about our declaration of reestablishment, yes, North Carolina and Milo.
Yeah, Paul, I don't know what's going on, but you keep dropping out, my friend. Let's try this. If you would hang up and call back, and maybe we'll get a better connection. Because you're real loud, and then all of a sudden you kind of disappear.
All right, well, I'll try that.
Yeah, hang up and give me a call back, and I'll get right to you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so I was going to ask David something, and I lost my train of thought. David, what was I going to ask you?
If I could tell you.
Lord have mercy. Yeah, my mind went completely blank. I think it was something about the militia, since that seems to be...
Well, let me share something, since you bring up the militia. Here's an interesting little piece of information that many people still have a tremendous amount of respect for our first president of the United States, George Washington. But before he was president, he was the commander-in-chief of the Army. He was given that privilege by the First Continental Congress in commissioning him as the General of the Army. And he wrote a paper in 1783 called Sediments on a Peace Establishment while he was the General of the Army. And in there's a very interesting paragraph. And I'd just like to read it because it really does point out the same principle as we found in the Virginia Declaration of Rights of 1776, Section 13, where it says that a well-regulated militia, the same term that's used in the Second Amendment, composed of the body of the people trained to arms, is the proper, natural, and safe defense of a free state. And then it goes on and talks about the fact that standing armies in times of peace are inimical to freedom. But he says this, and just listen to what he says, because the thing he starts out by saying is so profound. He says, it may be laid down as a primary position and the basis of our system. And then he's going to say what that is. Think about that. Washington saying that the primary position and the basis of our system is what I'm about to tell you. That every citizen who enjoys the protection of a free government owes not only a proportion of his property, which is taxes, but even of his personal services to the defense of it, and consequently, that the citizens of America, with a few legal and official exceptions, from 18 to 50 years of age, should be born on the militia rolls, provided with uniform arms, and so far accustomed to the use of them that the total strength of the country might be called forth at a short notice on any very interesting emergency. For these purposes, they ought to be duly organized into commands of the same formation. And he goes on. And that was what he considered to be laid down as a primary position and the basis of our system, and we don't have it at all anymore.
Not even a reasonable facsimile, as they say.
Right. And see, the reason is, this goes back to that thing that you first asked, and that is, isn't it the people who are supposed to be the police power? Yes. That is, you see, Lincoln makes that phrase in the Gettysburg Address at the end, may it be highly resolved that this government of the people. Government of the people.
Right.
Not the government of this bureaucratic group of people or this elected people that don't do what we want them to do, but the government of the people, and then by the people. In other words, we are the ones who actually implement it, and then for the people, because we are the government and we're the ones that implement it, we therefore are going to do it for ourselves, because, nobody abuses themselves.
Yeah. Well, hopefully,
it's
though.
Simple.
Yeah.
Well, no, but seriously, normal people,
I agree.
reasonable, good people don't abuse themselves. And see, that's the whole point. We created a government in which there wouldn't be abuse because the people would be governing themselves.
Amen. All right, I got Paul back. Let's see if it's any better. All right, Paul, let's give it a shot. Let's see what you sound like.
Okay, well, I stepped out of my front porch, and there was a dog barking, but hopefully this is better.
So, yeah, well, you're a lot louder.
Okay.
Right, so,
well, thank you.
Go ahead.
So what I wanted to speak about was, as far as Texas.
My goodness, I don't know, what is that? What's causing that? You just dropped out again. You start out real loud, and then out of nowhere, it's like somebody drops the volume on your microphone.
Well, I'm on my phone, so I don't know what's going on. Hold on.
I believe, Paul, it's your phone, because we've had this issue on conference calls before.
Where it just drops out? The volume just drops out?
All right. I just took off speakerphone.
Okay.
And I'm on the phone.
All right. Let's see if that works better. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm sorry. So, as far as Texas is concerned, we want to give a great shout-out to the assistance of Milo and North Carolina American Republic that helped us so much in our efforts. With that said, we did not just do this overnight. Yes, Milo is correct. It took us a year to get to where we are. And it wasn't just because we decided just to do this. is that we had a good foundation of people that understood the problems, and we just didn't have the remedy. And then we discovered, yes, sir.
I have a question. So what did you do practically in the first steps of that process? Obviously, you would have had to go to Austin or somehow get online with Austin to find out what the different constitutions were in the state. And then you would have had to get together and do something to come to a conclusion as to which constitution to use, and then how you want to create your declaration of resettlement. What were the things that practically you did in that process?
Okay.
And who was involved in that?
Well, before we get to who was involved in that, what we did is that we reviewed what North Carolina did and America's Remedy, and looked at the process, and then we discussed it. I think we discussed it for almost 3-4 months of, all right, this is what this group's doing. What do we think about this? We had in-depth online conversations about this. Like, does this look like the proper, remedy? But like I said, we had a good foundation of people that understood. We didn't have to go to Austin to get the documents. The documents are online. Some of our people involved with us are scholars that have the historical background of knowledge of all the different constitutions that our state has had. And we had to approve and adopt a constitution, but that was not our first step. Our first step was to make a decision that we are going to give oath and allegiance to Texas and to the United States of America, which is different than giving oath and allegiance to the United States per the 14th Amendment citizen. Once we did that, then we drafted up along the lines of the North Carolina paperwork of giving an affidavit in citizenship of domicile as our foundational documents. So it's not a fact of having to go to the state to get records and copies and this and that.
But you technically did that. It's just that they already had them. I was just pointing out that at some point in the history of the people that were involved, they got the proper information from the source where that information was located. That's all I meant by going to Austin. I didn't mean to. You're asking anybody's permission or anything like that. It was just the point you knew what the information was you needed in order to put together what you did. And I'm assuming that what you also had was the information that America's Remedy brought to the table to help you realize where you wanted to go and what you wanted to do. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, of course. Because it's the most viable and peaceful solution to establish a record. And this is the whole thing, is that you have to establish a record of what you're doing. We can't be out there like the alleged sovereign citizens running around, claiming I'm a free man on the land. And, but you do not have a body politic. You're an island, basically. So we are a group of people that have come together. We've made a decision that we're declaring. 1776, only 3% of the people of the United States, or the Americans, decided to lay down a declaration and fight for it.
Well, that's not exactly correct, but we'll talk about that another time. But that's okay. There were many more than 3% involved in that process. It's only 3% fought in the war.
Yes. Well, I was just making a off-cuff remark there.
Okay, that's cool.
Okay. Because I when it comes to numbers and things like that, unless it's on a tape measure, I don't know.
Okay.
It was probably more like 30 to 35% when we really know what was going on.
Right, but basically, it's this is not a process like some people see on the internet, like a silver bullet process. This is something that you have to commit your heart, your soul, your mind to get this thing through, and it's not easy as far as just signing papers. You've got to be able to read, understand, and draft paperwork to make this thing happen. You have to be able to defend it. You have to be able to stand on it. You have to be able to walk the walk, talk the talk, and all that.
When you got your paperwork together, who did you file it with?
Well, we don't have to file the paperwork. And currently, as it stands, Riscalla, is that we are now in the, since we signed the Declaration of Reestablishment for our own selves, we are now in the steps of filing or writing out our proclamation of reestablishment to give notice to our state and to the federal government.
I'd like to elaborate on that just a little bit, if I may, Riscalla.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Paul is correct when he says that, technically speaking, a reestablished de jure state doesn't have any obligation to file paperwork with the de facto state. However, I mentioned earlier that when North Carolina reestablished, they sent a copy of their Declaration of Reestablishment to both the acting de facto governor of North Carolina and the president who was sitting at the time, which is Bill Clinton. And the reason that they did that was because the same reason that Thomas Jefferson and the other members of the Continental Congress wound up sending their Declaration of Independence to the very King of England that they were indicting in that document, is to, as he says in the document, it is to give notice to a candid world. And so one of the principles of law is that you always have to give notice. Paul mentions putting things on the record, and that's just part of putting it on the record, is that you do send notice. The fact is you're just sending it to those acting in offices in the executive of the very state and political entities that you are alleging, in this instance, don't have a lawful authority to act in that capacity. But we're just giving notice. Ultimately, is really all that it's about.
And there's a maxim of law is called notice to agent, notice to principal. So if I send it to the President of the United States as notice, it's his obligation to notify all of his subordinates.
Right.
Yeah, I'm picking those dogs up behind you. So would it be right if I said we got our declaration and the proper paperwork together, and I wanted to notify these people? Would I be correct in saying that it would be the governor and the president? Is that who I would send it to?
Mm-hmm. Because it's his responsibility to send it down the line.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Now you can post it in local newspapers, or you can go pin it on the courthouse bulletin board, or whatever you feel like doing with it. But we do recommend sending it to the executives of the de facto state and at the federal level as well.
All right, cool. All right, David, I think you're chomping at the bit back there. I just sense that he's got something he wants to share.
Well, I was just going to further elaborate on that whole history because it does point out, as both Milo and Paul have stated, this concept of notice. If you go back to the history of our Declaration of Independence, even prior to that, the Articles of Association of 1774, which is probably the true original founding document of our country, the First Continental Congress actually sent several documents to several different governmental institutions, not only to the king, representing the monarchy and the executive function, but they also sent documents to the parliament, and they sent documents, literally a letter to the people of Great Britain, even to the people of Canada and several of the other colonies, so that there was absolutely no questions as to the intentions and the actions of the founding generation through their process of creating this new governmental entity. And I would suggest that, though it probably was adequate to send it to the governor and the president, it may have been equally as valuable to send that to the Speaker of the House of Representatives and the President of the Senate of the state of North Carolina, send it to the Supreme Court of the state of North Carolina, or to the Supreme Court and the legislature of Texas when they move through those processes, because this really has to do with making sure that there is a clear and unquestionable set of actions that show that there is something being remedied, something that is being adjusted, that there's corrections, as I used that term earlier. And so this concept of notice is a critical part, I think, of what would need to be done for any state, especially when they have been abused and they have been corrupted by this overthrow by a bayonet and the barrel of a gun, where the governor, for instance, in North Carolina, he literally protested that he was being taken out of office and replaced by a governor who was beholden to the military power back in 1868. So, these things all have ramifications, and there's consequences to the actions. That's just some one observation I had in response to what's been stated.
I completely agree with you, David. There's no harm in duplicating that process and being redundant about it. It can only benefit you.
And everybody will know. That's the thing.
Right. Right.
David, you mentioned something a little earlier about the Florida Constitution. Where did you did you find that online?
No, that's why I asked the question I did earlier. I had to literally go to the Supreme Court Library in Tallahassee and make a copy of it. I brought a scanner with me, went in, because depending on the state, they're still getting this stuff online. Now, this was, 5 or 6 years ago, but back then they didn't have all of the documents archived yet into the internet, into a database. I don't know how far along they are. They probably have got most of them by now, but I literally had to go and pull out the statutes at large and pull the constitutions from those particular years that are in the volumes in the Supreme Court Library, and that's where I got the information. Now, in hindsight, I probably wish I had. I did not copy the entire Constitution of 1845. I just copied the portions that had to do with the militia in the copies that I have. It's a 3-ring binder that's a 3-inch binder that I've got all this documentation in. So, some of it's pretty, there's a lot of copying that needs to be done if you don't have access, depending on which state of the union is involved. And, these are the, clerical, things that are going to have to be done in a state that wants to, clearly understand what it is that we need to rectify. Fortunately, it's all there. And probably, I would suspect that most of it's been copied by now, or will be shortly. So we can hopefully not have to make a 300, 500-mile drive to go get this information from the state capitol.
Now, if I can interject there, Riscalla?
Sure, go ahead.
And that's what we're finding here in Texas at times, is that we may not be able to find, what we want to find on the internet, and we would have to go to a college state library, law, and get the actual documents. And Texas being so big, it's not an easy drive for us, to just take off work and go do this and that. So we're trying to do the best we can with the information we have at hand, and until we can afford such time to go get some of the actual physical photocopies of the legal record of what happened. This is an effort of being able to take the time to afford yourself, if you can do it, to go and gain the research.
All right. That sounds logical to me.
Yeah.
So,
this is not a, like I said, it's not a, paper signing document or a feel good piece of work that you're going to do. This is a commitment.
It sounds like it's a work that is a continuous process. It's not something that it's you turn the paperwork in and it's done. It's an ongoing thing. Well, I for one, I want to see what we can do here in Florida. I want to get a movement here in Florida, and I like the idea that I think Milo brought up, and Milo or David, I'm not sure. I think it was Milo, about getting a commitment from somebody, like a pre-commitment. I'm willing to commit if you get, however many people that number is. I like that idea. That way we have the horsepower before we get involved. We know how many people are willing to put their actions on the line. I like that idea. I'd like to see whatever the first step is going to be for us here in Florida.
Well, if I may ask Milo, doesn't Cliff have pre-commitments from Florida?
Honestly, I don't know. We have not put the Reestablish the State movement as such. That's the name that Cliff gave to that concept. And now we've just kind of started using that as a general term for the entire process. But that was the name he gave to that process initially, was to get those pre-commitments and follow that template, if you will, from the Free State Project. But we haven't really put that into action in any state that I'm aware of. We may have some action cards and contact information for people in Florida. You would have to ask Cliff about that because I don't have access to those right off the bat. But as far as I'm aware, no, I don't think we have any pre-commitments from people, in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I didn't know. And Riscalla, if I may offer, we do have a state reestablishment conference call that we do from time to time, and I would like to add you to that if you'd like.
Sure. Yep.
And
that is something. I'll second Paul on that. That's been pretty valuable for us. Texas was helping us. Some of the people from Texas were helping us with America's Remedy to try to expand this idea into other states, and that was one of the tools we were using. It's both a Facebook group and a conference call. It used to occur on a schedule weekly, but recently, due to people's personal commitments and whatnot, it's been sort of set aside and put on the back burner for a little bit, but it is still going on. So if you're interested in getting Florida going, Riscalla, then we'd love to have you join us on that call.
Yeah, include me. You have my cell number.
I do, indeed.
And what do you need, my email address in order to do that?
No, we'll just include you in the group.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll get in touch with you later on in private message, and I'll send you a link.
Great. Yeah.
And Riscalla, also, if you look up Citizens of Texas of the American Republic group on Facebook, you can go back and look at all of our archives, our video of our Declaration of Reestablishment, when we did the signing and all that.
And what was that name again, Paul? Say it again.
Citizens of the Texas American Republic.
Citizens of The Texan?
Texas.
Texas American Republic.
Okay. I'll go look that up.
Yeah. Well, I can add you to the group.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, do that.
Well, Riscalla, I don't know how much time we've got before you have to go to a break.
We got about another 10 minutes or so.
Okay. Well, I'm kind of anxious since you brought it up. You're talking about wanting to reestablish in Florida, and David and I had a conversation earlier today, and David had a interesting line of questioning. Sounds like he's going to interrogate you. I really kind of want to urge David to ask you this. I don't know if he wants to ask you now, but I'm interested to hear the reply.
Go ahead, Dave.
Well, that's funny because I was about ready to say something, and you segued it really well. Because we have about an hour left, and I think that this is a very useful exercise of conversation. What we're involved in here is a conversation that needs to go viral. It needs to be that people start looking at this whole idea and make it the kind of thing they talk about at the water cooler, as that phrase goes. I've said that several times in prior shows. But and Riscalla, I think what word I'm going to go back to, right? Relevance. And the question that, I was talking with Milo because we knew you'd invited us to be back on the show. And I was just talking to him and was asking him if he thought this was a reasonable thing to discuss. And that is, so what? What difference would it make for us to do this? Why is it that we need to spend some time going down this road and make a change? What will it accomplish? Why is it now, because of the few shows that we've done, Riscalla, with you now have this burr in your saddle, this interest to do something, and what difference is it really going to make in the grand scheme of things? How is this going to affect the way that our country is going, if anything is going to affect the way our country is going? Why would it be that this approach of reestablishing a state constitution is going to do any good at all, considering how bad things are, how messed up they are? What's it going to accomplish? And then from that, a whole bunch of other questions might surface that we might want to discuss as well. But I think it's important to drill down in this way, because if you remember, over the course of the last 20 or 25 years, there have been many quote-unquote movements that have been attempted, and we certainly see how they've all worked out, right? Do we want to try another, approach that's just as ineffective as that one was? And then the other question is, what if we only have 20, 30 people in a state, or 100 or 200 people that actually take it seriously? What good does that do, or does that do more harm than good? And so I'm not trying to be devil's advocate here. I'm trying to be more of, we need to scrutinize what we're trying to accomplish to make sure that this really is something that makes sense, and that we can get this into a conversation that goes viral in and of itself, if you see what I'm saying. Wouldn't it be great if people actually thought, hey, you know what, there's something we need to be talking about? And it seems like it makes a lot of sense. If we don't have something that people, when they hear about it, go, that makes sense. I really would like to talk about that some more. I really would like to wrap my mind around that. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Then we're really wasting time. And so that was the kind of the gist of what I said to Milo a little earlier tonight, wanted to bring up tonight. And see, and maybe I'm not even hitting on exactly what it is we want to discuss, but that's where my mind is going with it. So that's what I threw out. Milo, did I hit it pretty well?
Yeah, I mean, you did. You know, you're verbose. People tell me I write books on the internet when I write a comment or something, but you do spend a lot of words, Dave.
Yeah.
I think if I had to try to just summarize it, the direct and simple question for Riscalla, given his personal inclination to want to try to reestablish in Florida, is why this, and what, like you said, David, what good do you think this will do? And I am interested in hearing the answer to that question, just like I'm always interested in hearing the answers and the perspectives and, the opinions of anybody who takes the time to internalize this information and come to some conclusion. Whether they're for or against it, I still want to know.
For me, why? Why? Because there's many whys. I think the major why for me would be my kids and my grandkids. What do I expect to get out of it? I don't really expect to get anything out of it in my lifetime. I expect what we're doing here is, I would think it would be triple blessed if it happened within my lifetime, but I think what we're doing is laying the groundwork, very similar to what David said earlier about those few people who got together and petitioned to be able to educate their children at home without fear of being arrested. It took them a little while to do that, but the end result was a huge change in the entire country with regard to how parents could educate their children. So the why for me is because I have kids and grandkids, the major why. The intention is positive change for the future, for them. I don't think that anything I could do, because this is such a large and really a vast challenge. It's kind of like when you look at the planet itself. The planet, they tell me the planet revolves at 26,000 miles an hour, but if you are on the planet, it sure doesn't seem like that. It doesn't feel like we're doing 26,000 miles an hour around, spinning around as we're going around the sun. But it's doing it, and it's doing it in little bits and pieces at a time in our life, so that over a period of time, it's a huge distance. And so I kind of see this the same way. We do little bites here, little bites there, a step here, a step there, but then over a period of time, that lays the foundation. That's the groundwork. That's the cement, if you will, to build upon, to have people come in and build upon that. I really believe one of the things that has happened in our country, President Kennedy said this many times, that he wanted us to be free and independent. Well, we are no longer free. I mean, anybody who has any idea can see that. And we certainly are no longer independent. More and more people are dependent upon the government now than ever before. That's not what government was put in place for. We're supposed to be independent, dependent upon ourselves, not dependent upon a government that at any given time can say, you're off the list, see you bye, you're done, and then your life is literally over. It was never intended to be. Again, these are my opinions. This is how I see the founding fathers laying out the lives for people, because when they came here, they were independent. They had to figure out how to make a life out of wilderness, and they used that experience to lay the groundwork for a future generation, and so on and so on. We don't pass knowledge on like we used to. Skills are not treated in the manner that they used to be. When I went to school, we had shop. I took every shop that I love shop. I love working with my hands. And what I'm alluding to is that as we have, quote, progressed in this country, in some ways we have regressed drastically. And some of those ways are the way, when I look at our government and I see what our government has done, and how it has literally stuck its nose into every bit of my business, to the point that a major TV manufacturer has publicly stated, you be careful what you say and do in front of your television in your home if it's plugged into the internet, because people can hack into your TV. What they're telling you is there's no people going to hack into your TV per se. The government will. If they think that you've got some kind of nefarious something or another, they'll hack into your TV. They'll hack into your personal device that you carry with you 24/7. They'll listen in on you. They listen into our messages. They copy every email that is sent. There's no longer privacy in this country anymore. For me, it's not like I have anything to hide, and I have everything to hide. It's called my privacy. I don't want my private life spewed out before people I don't know, especially when it's my obligation to do that, not them to steal that from me by utilizing technology. Again, these are all the different ways that I see our government has way overstepped its boundaries, When this was all set up, I truly, totally, 100% believe that the people who set it up wanted the government to be afraid of the people, have respect for the people. And what do we have today? We have 180 degrees. We have people who are afraid of their government. And what is the result of that? Tyranny. There is so much intrusion into our lives today by what we call government. It truly sickens me. It really does. So my intention is to lay forth a groundwork. And I don't want to, excuse my expression, piss my time away. I've told you guys many times, when someone takes the time out of their life to share knowledge with somebody else, that's one of the greatest gifts that they can give, because they can't get that back. I don't want to spend my time on a system or a movement of some sort that has a whirlwind like a tornado, the life of a tornado. It's short-lived, it creates hell, short-lived, and accomplishes nothing but destruction. I don't want that. We've got enough of that on this place. So when I saw what these people were talking about, what Milo was talking about, what David was talking about, what Paul was talking about, what John Ainsworth was talking about, I saw this is a vital piece of knowledge that people need to know. And not only that, it is a viable way for us to go back to what we're supposed to be doing. We're not supposed to have a government that literally is in every aspect of our lives. My God, because of the way that we have permitted these people to carry on. A 7-year-old child being put in a court case because the mom doesn't want the child to be a boy. The mom wants the child to be a girl. And the father says it's too young. And they have to go to court over that? That's just, it's unacceptable. We know better in our hearts. This should have never even got to that point. When that child is 18, 19, 20 years old and can make a decision about like that about their life, then let them make the decision at that point. At 7 years old, and when it's taken to court and the court upholds the mom saying that, yeah, we're going to transgender this child, and now we have people who are introducing legislation saying anybody who tries to transgender a child is going to be guilty of a felony. This is the insanity that we're living under. We shouldn't even have to think that a law needs to be written like that. Instead, what we should have is the moral compass to understand. A 7-year-old doesn't even know who he is. My God, you should be ashamed of yourself. But this is the insanity that we live with today. This is what we have allowed to occur in our lives. Along with this insanity, we have allowed a government that has been put in place by deception, by lies, to take over, and as we see it today, absolute chaos. A government that is self-imploding upon itself. So there has never been a better time to discuss this than right now. Because right now we're watching what is happening, and it's a political civil war that's going on. Go ahead.
As far as that 7-year-old boy transgender, Texas American Republic did sit on that court case and watched it.
Yeah.
We were there.
They finally decided in favor of the father, which really, why would you say it's in favor of the father? How about it's in favor of God? God decided that he was a boy. Why can't you let that be until that person, that being, is old enough to make that decision? It's horrible.
Yeah, it was horrible. And to listen to the testimony of these alleged psychiatrists and these doctors of transgenderism and stuff like this, it was for the lack of better words, a circus.
Yeah, truly was.
And I was watching the jury, and some of the people in the jury were like frowning and scowling. It's like, you just said what? In regards to, a boy is not a boy until he makes up his mind to be a boy, and a girl is not a girl until she makes up her mind to be a girl.
Yeah,
and I was
ridiculous.
watching the judge, and she was going all crazy. It's like, oh my God.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
But I was there firsthand, witness testimony as far as seeing what was being said in that courtroom, and it was ridiculous. I mean, they're trying to twist words.
This is what we've allowed, and so back to Milo's question: why would I want to do this? Here's one of the reasons why I want to do this, Milo. I believe in my heart that this is. What's the best way to describe it? This would be the fracture in the darkness and the evil that has beset itself upon us. That I know that there's nothing I can do personally to overcome it all completely, but I know that there are little things that I can do to start to crack in the dam, if you will, that will eventually break that dam down, and then when it gets rebuilt properly. It gets rebuilt to the point where it won't break again. We get rid of these criminals. We get rid of this evil content that is within our government, and we put it back to the way that it was, because it will be people that are for people. It will be our neighbors that are representing us, instead of somebody who just has a lot of money, because that's really what it's all about now. If you have a lot of money, you can literally become part of our government. And the greatest example I can give you here in Florida, the previous governor, I don't know how much this one spent that we have now, but I can tell you the previous governor spent over $50 million for to sit at the state, the highest seat in the state. $50 million. Who's got $50 million laying around? That's not the way it was supposed to be.
Do you have to make? How many people do you have to sell your soul out to?
Amen.
Promise this or that to benefit them in order to raise that much money.
And
those are all. I feel you. I totally understand where you're coming from as far as your motivations for why you want to see a change. I completely get that. I mean, I'm right there with you.
And I see this.
Interesting.
I see this as a way to make that change. In my opinion, in my mind, when all this was set up and they said, okay, you're going to be a governor, you're going to be a senator, you're going to be a representative, you're going to be a congressman, whatever that is, it was supposed to be as a service. It wasn't supposed to be as a lifelong career, and you're a multimillionaire before it's all done, and you have the Cadillac products of healthcare and retirement and all these, all on the backs of the citizens. Forget that nonsense. It's time to take our country back, and this is a way to do that, a viable way, a legal way. It's not going to happen overnight. What we're talking about didn't happen, well, it almost did, but it didn't happen literally overnight. It took a little bit of time. It'll take some time to get it back to where it needs to be. But what we need today, we need people who have heard this message and believe in this message. And what we're telling you, I have no doubt in my mind, is 100% accurate. When I tell you this nation was overthrown in the late 1800s by deception. And what we're asking for is a restoration of that. Like I said earlier about my favorite wrench. It was rusted. When it worked fine. But once it got corrupted, once it got rusted and corroded, it didn't work worth a spit. I ended up having to acid wash it and recoat it in order to make it work again. But once I did that and it worked properly, it was a blessing instead of a curse, because I was using a lot of curse words when it wasn't working.
Well, if I may comment on David's statement and in regards to Milo's restatement on the question. Something I always go back to is, if it's not up to me, then who?
Yeah, then who? Because there's too many of us sitting on the sidelines today when we really should be standing up for what is right. And the result of that is what we're seeing today. We're seeing a completely upside-down situation in our society, in our government. And look at the school system. Oh, my God, I could do 10 shows about how horrible our school system is. They're teaching children things that they have no business teaching our children. But yet it's going on. It's going on by deception.
What I really want to get at here, and I think what David was trying to get at when he posed this originally to me today, is something that you kind of hinted at, Riscalla, when you said a few minutes ago, you don't want to give your time and effort to something that's going to have the lifespan of a tornado. And that's really, I understand the motivations for wanting to seek some kind of remedy. But the thrust of the question that David originally was asking, that I just rephrased, is really aimed at why this in particular. And if you feel like this is something that's going to have a lasting effect, that it's not going to be here one day and gone the next, that's a valid response to that. And I would be happy to hear that you feel that way about it. But that's the kind of answer that I think we were trying to get at, is to find out why this is the particular answer as opposed to any of the myriad other possibilities. And if
May I drill down?
By all
means. Break, but let me drill down a little bit further, because Riscalla, I really appreciate what you said, but we need to drill further down and get a bit more specific about why the ideas that have been presented over the last 8 weeks are really, in your mind, the legitimacy of this thing. Okay, so do you need to take a break and then we can come back and?
Yeah, we'll take a quick break. Take a quick break and then we'll come right back and we'll talk about why.
Cool.
All right, don't go away. Here we go.
I know you're out there. I can feel you now. I know that you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes. I didn't have time to
You have to give us your name.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Mark Robinson. I live at... That's right here in Greensboro. Lived in Greensboro all my life. I didn't have time to write a fancy speech. I didn't have time to, I didn't have the resource of an English teacher to sit down and write a speech with at school today and be, brought over here or practice or anything. What I really came down here for is this. I've heard a whole lot of people in here talking tonight about this group and that group and domestic violence and blacks, these minorities and that minority. What I want to know is, when are you all going to start standing up for the majority? And here's who the majority is. I'm the majority. I'm a law-abiding citizen who's never shot anybody, never committed a serious crime, never committed a felony. I've never done anything like that. But it seems like every time we have one of these shootings, nobody wants to put the blame where it goes, which is at the shooter's feet. You want to put it at my feet. You want to turn around and restrict my right, constitutional right that's spelled out in black and white. You want to restrict my right to buy a firearm and protect myself from some of the very people you're talking about in here tonight. It's ridiculous. I don't think Rod Serling could come up with a better script. It does not make any sense. The law-abiding citizens of this community and many communities around this country, we're the first ones taxed and the last ones considered and the first ones punished when things like this happens, because our rights are the ones that are being taken away. That's the reason why I came down here today. Gun show or no gun show, NRA or no NRA. I'm here to stand up for the law-abiding citizens of this community, because I'm going to tell you that what's going to happen. You can take the guns away from us all you want to. You all write a law, I follow the law, I'll bring my guns down here, I'll turn them in. But here's what's going to happen. The Crips and the Bloods on the other side of town, they're not going to turn their guns in. They're going to hold on to them. And what's going to happen when you have to send the police down there to go take them? The police can barely enforce the law as it is. As what I see, we demonize the police, criminalize and vilify the police, and we make the criminals into victims. And we're talking about restricting guns? How are you going to do that? How are you going to do that when the police department's already hamstrung? You're not going to be able to go down here and take these guns from these criminals. So the criminals are going to hold on to their guns. They're still going to have them. They're still going to break in my house, and they're still going to shoot me with them. And guess who's going to be the one that suffers? It's going to be me. Well, I'm here to tell you tonight, it is not going to happen without a fight. And when I say fight, I don't mean shots fired. I don't mean fist thrown. I mean I'm going to come down here to this city council and raise hell just like these loonies from the left do until you listen to the majority of the people in this city. And I am the majority. The majority of the people in this city are law-abiding. And they follow the law. And they want their constitutional right to be able to bear arms. They want to be able to go to the gun show and buy a hunting rifle or a sport rifle. There are no military-grade weapons sold at the gun show. An AR-15 is not a military-grade weapon. Anybody that would go into combat with an AR-15 is a fool. It's a semi-automatic .22 rifle. You'd be killed in 15 minutes in combat with that thing. So we need to dispel all these myths, and we need to drop all this division that we got going on here. Because the bottom line is, when that Second Amendment was written, whether the framers liked it or not, they wrote it for everybody. And I am everybody. And the law-abiding citizens of this city are everybody. And we want our rights, and we want to keep our rights. And by God, we're going to keep them, come hell or high water.
You're listening to WCET FM, America's talk station. Better than late night in the Midlands.
There's nothing better than late night in the Midlands. I love to talk to people from the heartland. They're tremendous people. They really are.
Opinions, politics.
I'm going to give you 10 minutes tonight because you're tremendous people.
Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris. She's a horror show.
Elizabeth Warren. Pocahontas.
But I mean, Elizabeth Warren, I love my Pocahontas. She is the gift that keeps on giving.
Oh, and good old Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders, oh my God, what a communist. He's not even a socialist. He is such a communist.
Then there's Sloppy Joe. Sleepy Joe.
Sleepy Joe Biden. Every time he sniffs a little girl's head.
You heard the man. Nothing better. Late night in the Midlands. We cover everything.
And as we have been programmed mentally, intellectually, one must be aware of this being programmed like a computer.
The programming that we are constantly assaulted by throughout our life conditions us, it programs us to a particular worldview.
The project is literally the secularization of the world. New secular or worldly order.
A new study says the news media have been pushing a gospel of godlessness on the American public.
Because this media is here and designed to make sure that they ask no critical questions. To make sure that the only thing that they are concerned about is having a good time. And so that is why today, one of the struggles that you have as young people, that when you want to do different events and you want to talk about real issues, you have the struggle of many of your peers who've been so conditioned in this matrix that they would rather party than listen to the truth. They would rather party and shop and go to the mall than to stand up for issues of justice. They're stuck in the matrix. But you have the responsibility of helping to wake them up.
Now, how do we know that there's a God? After having been thoroughly brainwashed. And how do we know that there's a creator?
Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. You take the red pill, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, 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 take the red. You stay in Wonderland. You stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
You're listening to the Red Pill Reality Show with your host, Riscalla, every Saturday night on the LNM Network from 9 p.m. to midnight. And now your host, Riscalla.
All right, we are back. It is the Red Pill Reality Show. An honor and a privilege to have you here with us tonight and allow us to share with you this information. Some really very important questions this last go around. Why am I doing what I'm doing? And what's the intention behind why I'm doing what I'm doing? Why am I looking at this versus other things that are out there? Why I'm doing what I'm doing is because I have people that I love and care for. And in the brief period of time that I've been on this planet, I've seen a huge change. And the change hasn't been good. And I believe that if I just sit back and do nothing, then I play a part of that change that is no good. Because sitting back and doing nothing helps that is happening to continue, and it continues to get worse. So why I do what I do is because I have people that I love and I care for. I have children, I have grandchildren. I'd like to see a future for them that is brighter than what I see today. And it seems as though the last couple of decades, the generation's futures are dimmer and dimmer. So I do what I can, my part, whatever little bit that is, even if it's to upset people, if I can get them in the mindset that something is not right and there is a resolution, there's a way to make what's not right, right again. This is one of the ways to do that, and I don't know of any other way, to be honest with you. But I go, in the 66 years I've spent on this planet, I go now as the last, 10 years or so, with what I feel inside of me, my gut, if you will. I've learned that my gut is also something that can steer me in the right direction. And when I heard about this and when I read about this and the information that I got about this tells me this is the right way to go. So the reason I chose this is because I believe in it, like I believe in this station. From the moment that we had to ask people to subscribe, we wanted to make it free. We can't because of the system that we live in. So from the moment that they asked for subscriptions, I was one of the first to subscribe. I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm just telling you a fact. Because I believe in this network. I believe in what I'm telling you tonight, that this is a way for us to implement a positive, anybody can bring about a change. The last president brought about a change that was disgusting, in my opinion. I'm not looking for that. I'm looking to bring about a positive change. And it may not happen in my lifetime. I accept that. But it's like planting a tree. You may not see the fruition of that tree in your lifetime, but you know that it's going to be there when you're gone. And it will be in remembrance of you as it grows. That's what we're laying out tonight. I don't care if people remember me or not. Really, that's not what it is about for me. What I care about is the future of my children and my grandchildren. And I think that there's a lot of other people who feel the same way I feel, because in the discussions that I have with different people, as different as we are and as of many things that we disagree upon, much of what we do agree upon revolves around our family. We realize that there is an attack upon the family, unlike ever before, and we should do whatever we can to keep that family going. This is a way to do that. The government that we have today, without question, is not the government that was intended for us. I mean, you just look at what's going on. So what we're talking about is a restoration. So tonight, right now, I have, let's see, I have Paul, I have Milo, and I have David. Now I'm going to get to David now, because David had, just before we went to the break, David was bringing up something. So let me go back to Dave. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, we've only got a few minutes left, and sometimes the way a teacher teaches is they ask questions knowing the answer.
Yeah, yeah.
And so if you know what a pre-quiz is, that's when you ask the students a bunch of questions, not expect they're going to be graded on it, but just to find out if you have to teach the material. And so part of the reason for asking the question I broached and suggested to Milo before the show is because if we don't really understand why we need to go down this road and really have a clear, precise understanding, then we're going to spin our wheels. And Milo mentioned the point that I talk a lot about vested authority, and that the people of this country no longer have that. The idea, the very practical way to look at that, if anybody walks up to you and shows you a badge, you immediately give them a respect that you don't give to just somebody who's just walking, coming up and saying something to you, because they have been bestowed with a particular authority. And it used to be in this country that was the average able-bodied male in this country, as a member of a militia, as a militiaman. And over a period of time, the government figured out how to eliminate that particular power in the hands of a people ourselves. The premise that's being made here, the assumption being made here, is that the 39th Congress, right after the Civil War, began a process to eliminate that vested authority, and did it by taking away states' rights from the states, taking away the citizenship of the people and putting that citizenship at a national level rather than at a state level, whereby the people of the state no longer would have the authority and have the standing in order to be the enforcers, the executors of the law in their states. The state militia executes the laws of the state. That's its actual function constitutionally. And they had to figure out a way to do that. Once you take away the ability of the people themselves to do that function, somebody else is going to have to do it. It's no accident that the FBI and the AFTBE and many of the other alphabet agencies never existed until the militia was removed from the states, and that the Dick Law was put in place in 1903. And so the point here that I'm trying to help us to think through is, what is the real reason that we want to pursue this? See, if we can't give people a real concrete understanding as to why this is a legitimate and viable direction to go, then nobody's going to buy in. And we've got to really take some time and think through what the benefits are to this particular approach. What is it going to give us in the end? For me, it's to give us back the ultimate authority of the people to protect ourselves through subsidiarity, that we have the mechanism, the authority, and the access to the information that we need at the local level to solve our problems without having to go to somebody up above unless they're absolutely essential. And that is, and to stop the control frauds that are by the tens of thousands that have been perpetrated, where a control fraud being where they take a legitimate entity and they turn it into a weapon against us. And we have that happening all the time. And so that, to me, is the gist of where I was, trying to, take the conversation. That's really all I wanted to say on the concept at this point.
Well, I agree with you. I think for me, part of it also is to return to I see a balance in the way you guys have described what has happened with regard to the thievery of the rights of the states. I see that because of that, a smaller group of people gained a lot more power, where before that power would have been spread across a wide variety of people, balancing things out more than it is now. Things are out of balance. Clearly, things are out of balance right now. And I see this as when the people who put all of this together for us, I see this in their view as a way to keep things balanced. The Second Amendment, I've had many discussions about the Second Amendment, but I truly believe that when they wrote it, they knew doggone well that there was such a thing as a machine gun, because there was a gun that was shipped on a ship long before the Second Amendment was written, and that was declared to be a machine gun. So they knew that there were weaponry out there that weren't just muskets. And their intention was to see to it that the people and the government had a balance between them of physical power, so that the government could never force the people to do things that they don't have the authority to do, which is exactly what is going on today.
Hey, Riscalla, one of the real simple examples of that is that, do you know that most of the cannon that were used in the Revolutionary War were privately owned?
No, I did not. Wow.
And the people took their cannons and because they used them to protect their properties, and they, were commissioned to the Continental Army, and that's where many of the cannon came from during the Civil War, or the Revolutionary War. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I had no idea that that's a shock, but it makes sense. It does make sense because you described the militia as ordinary people. So these would be people that would have weaponry like cannons. Gatling guns, I think, was one of them. I don't know when the Gatling gun came out, but I read an article about a, quote, machine gun that was shipped, was from England, I think it was, or Italy, maybe in Italy, to the United States. And on the manifesto, they labeled it as a machine gun. This is in the early 1700s, 1714, something 12, somewhere in there, long before we declared the Constitution and our dependence. So they knew that
It was called the puckle gun.
What was it?
It's the puckle gun.
Yes, that's right. The pickle. It sounded like pickle. That's right. I remember
Puckle.
that. Yeah. That's how I try to remember certain names. I try to rhyme them with something. It did sound like pickle, so that's probably it.
Yep.
The puckle gun.
Another thing that's key to the conversation is when you talked about gun control back prior to 1968, or even, maybe you go back, the 1968 Gun Control Act. Gun control was actually the controlling of the gun that you were required to maintain, not restricted from maintaining.
Mm-hmm.
It was the idea that you, as an able-bodied male, you had a duty to have a weapon, and you were to maintain it for the purposes of your militia function. It was the exact opposite of the way that gun control is talked about today.
Yeah. Well, this is the 180-degree turn that we have taken over a period of time. So I don't expect, as we move forward with this, I don't expect this to happen in a day or like it did with Paul. It took about a year. Okay, if it takes a year, it's a year. But my whole intention is this is to lay the groundwork for a positive future for my grandkids. I think you'd have to be sleeping under a rock to think that things are okay today. With all that is going on around us, someone to think that everything is fine and dandy. I'd like to live in your world because I don't see it that way at all. And a lot of the people that I speak with don't see it that way at all. They see a deterioration of our society, a clear deterioration in our government. I see the government that we have, even though it is de facto, I see them literally imploding. And that is, again, another reason why I am continuing to do these shows and speak on this one subject, which I believe is a viable subject. I'm trying to think of the right word. A viable means for us to return back to a balance. We have no balance anymore, you guys. There is no balance. It's either all for them or nothing.
Well, if I may, Riscalla, and I appreciate the fact that you're doing it for your children and your grandchildren, but you also have to do it for your posterity. And that's what our founding fathers did.
Yeah. That's lower. That's lower on the priorities, but yes, I agree with you. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, personal family is one thing, but for the good of the whole, that's what we're all about.
Yeah. Well, that's for me when I create a situation where everybody wins. That's one of my passions, and this is where everybody wins. All right, we are just about completely out of time. I want to thank Paul. Thank you, Paul, for taking time to call in and share with us tonight. Greatly appreciate it, my friend. We'll look forward to having you on at another time in the future. Milo, thank you so very much, my friend. God bless you for the work that you've done, for the information that you've passed. And David, without you, I wouldn't know about any of this stuff, so thank you. What I want to do really at this point is I want to continue doing this, but I want to see if we can start laying out the groundwork. We are babies and we're crawling. I want to figure out how we're going to start walking. I think that's the next step.
That's very exciting, Riscalla. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, my friend.
We appreciate being on the show again.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, listeners. Thank you, subscribers, and those of you who have donated. Thank you to the L&M Radio Network. Could not do it without you. Have an awesome evening, you guys. We'll be back in a week.
Take the red pill. Take the blue pill. 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 You take the red pill, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, 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 take the red. You stay in Wonderland. You stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.